Did you know that one of the earliest recorded black musicians in Europe was a royal trumpet player? His name was John Blanke, and he performed for the courts of both Henry VII and Henry VIII in the early 1500s. His presence in England is remarkable not just because he was a black man in Tudor society, but because he was a highly skilled musician, depicted in the historic Westminster Tournament Roll of 1511. His surname, Blanke, may have derived from the French blanc or Spanish blanco, meaning white, an ironic contrast to his likely West African heritage. But how did he arrive at the English court? Was he brought through trade routes connecting Europe and Africa, or was he already part of a growing black presence in Tudor England? In this video, we'll dive into John Blanke's story, his influence, and how black trumpet players have shaped music history from the royal courts to the golden age of jazz and beyond. John Blanke's origins are not precisely documented, but historians believe he may have come from West Africa, possibly from the region of present-day Ghana, Senegal, or Mali. During the late 15th and early 16th centuries, trade between Europe and West Africa was increasing, with merchants, diplomats, and even musicians traveling between the continents. It's likely that Blanke arrived in England through these connections, either as a free man seeking opportunity or as someone brought through European maritime networks. His presence at court suggests he was highly skilled. Tudor monarchs would not have employed just any musician for such an esteemed role. Blanke served as a royal trumpeter for both Henry VII and Henry VIII, a prestigious position in Tudor England. The trumpet was an instrument of power, used to announce the king's arrival, lead military processions, and add grandeur to important ceremonies. His most famous depiction appears in the Westminster Tournament Roll of 1511, a detailed manuscript commemorating a grand jousting tournament held by Henry VIII to celebrate the birth of his son. In this artwork, Blanke is shown wearing a turban and playing the trumpet, visually confirming his presence at the heart of English royalty. Remarkably, Blanke also made history by negotiating a pay raise. Records show that he petitioned Henry VIII for higher wages and was granted an increase, a rare achievement for any court musician at the time, let alone a black one. This suggests not only his exceptional talent but also his confidence and agency in a world where few like him held such privilege. John Blanke was not the only black musician to serve in European courts. Throughout history, black musicians have appeared in royal households across Portugal, Spain, and Italy, often as esteemed performers or military musicians. For example, records from the 16th and 17th centuries mention black drummers, trumpeters, and courtiers in the service of European nobility. Playing music for royalty was a highly prestigious role, as these musicians were essential for courtly ceremonies, state events, and even battlefield communication. The trumpet, in particular, held great significance. Not only was it a symbol of power and status, but it was also an instrument used in military contexts to signal commands and rally troops. This connection between ceremonial and military music meant that skilled trumpeters like John Blanke were both entertainers and figures of authority, reinforcing the idea that black musicians had an influential, if often overlooked, presence in European history. Long before John Blanke played his trumpet in the English court, brass instruments held deep cultural significance in many African societies, particularly in West Africa. For centuries, griots, oral historians and musicians used horns and trumpets to announce the arrival of rulers, communicate important messages, and accompany ceremonies. In the powerful kingdoms of Mali, Songhai, and Benin, musicians played long metal or ivory trumpets in royal courts, much like their European counterparts. These instruments were not just for entertainment, they symbolized authority, lineage, and divine connection. As trade and cultural exchange grew between Africa and Europe, so too did musical influences. African rhythmic structures and performance styles began to leave their mark on European compositions, while African musicians, including those in royal courts, contributed their skills and traditions to European music. This blending of musical worlds would later be seen even more prominently in the development of jazz and other genres rooted in African musical heritage. As music evolved over the centuries, the trumpet remained at the heart of black musical innovation, transitioning from classical and military settings to jazz, blues, and beyond. In the early 20th century, as jazz emerged from African American communities in New Orleans, the trumpet became one of its defining instruments. The same power and prestige that had once made the trumpet a symbol of royalty now made it the voice of a new cultural revolution, one driven by improvisation, emotion, and the rich musical traditions of Black America. This shift marked a new era where Black musicians not only played for elites but also led global musical movements, transforming the trumpet from a tool of formality into an instrument of freedom and self-expression. Few musicians embody this transformation more than Louis Armstrong, whose virtuosic trumpet playing and gravelly voice made him a global icon of jazz. Dizzy Gillespie, with his puffed cheeks and bent trumpet, pushed the boundaries of bebop, while Miles Davis redefined cool jazz with his haunting, introspective style. In the modern era, Wynton Marsalis has continued this legacy, blending classical technique with jazz mastery, proving that Black trumpet players are still shaping the sound of contemporary music. The trumpet, once a symbol of power in royal courts, became an instrument of rebellion, resilience, and reinvention in Black hands. From John Blanke's courtly fanfares to the fiery solos of jazz greats, Black musicians have consistently reshaped the way the trumpet is played and perceived, leaving a lasting mark on global music history. Today, Black trumpet players continue to make their mark across multiple genres, from classical concert halls to jazz clubs and even hip-hop and pop music. Artists like Terence Blanchard, known for his powerful jazz compositions and film scores, and Keyon Herald, whose trumpet work bridges jazz, R&B, and hip-hop, demonstrate the instrument's continued evolution in Black hands. In the classical world, musicians like Alison Balsam and Brandon Ridenauer have helped bring the trumpet into new, modern spaces, ensuring its relevance beyond traditional genres. Despite historical barriers, Black musicians have gained greater representation in major orchestras, conservatories, and solo careers, though challenges remain. John Blanke's presence in the Tudor court over 500 years ago serves as a powerful reminder that Black musicians have long been part of Europe's musical fabric. His legacy, and that of countless others who followed, paved the way for today's artists to play, innovate, and redefine what the trumpet and Black artistry can be.